A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes, as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week, we are reading through Chapter 6 of Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
I don't want to give away too much right now, but usually I either try to make something really good that I enjoy for drinks or make some sort of abomination. And this was something I thought would be tasty and it sucks. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of depressing right now.
Oh, don't beat yourself up too bad. We're going to do another one of these in a little bit here. So just kidding. Not one of these episodes, but later this week, we're going to be recording the third episode. Woo! You get another chance. You can redeem yourself. It's fun. To that point, today is our second episode discussing Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and we are going to chat about chapters 4 through 6. But before we get into that, what are you drinking, PJ?
I made a Cosmopolitan. I'm genuinely not positive I've actually ever had a Cosmopolitan. So maybe Cosmos just suck, and I wasn't aware of it. But I made some substitutions and some augmentations kind of out of necessity and what I thought would be better, and they didn't pan out. So a Cosmopolitan as standard as far as the recipe I found, and I didn't go looking for like what's a real Cosmopolitan, but the one I found: 2 ounces of vodka, 2 ounces of cranberry juice, 1 ounce of Cointreau, 1 ounce of lemon juice, and 1 ounce of simple syrup. Actually, these were tablespoons. These were measured in tablespoons, which is I've never seen that, but that's such a tiny drink, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. So that was, I just scaled it up to ounces instead because that seems better. Maybe tablespoons are way smaller than ounces. I don't remember. Anyway.
Regardless, if it's scalar, you don't think it would change the drink that much.
It wouldn't. And it didn't. I'm just talking about the recipe that I was reading. It very explicitly says to use unsweetened, like pure cranberry juice in that recipe. And I did not have that. I thought I did, which is why I went with this one, and I decided it, and I already brought all the bottles upstairs to make the cocktail, and I'm like, shit, this is cranberry juice cocktail, which is already sweetened.
Ooh. Yep.
So on the fly, to sort of compensate, I just added like a splash of bitter, or of a splash of simple syrup, and I thought just to kind of temper whatever sweetness might be coming out of the juice that's not supposed to be there, I added 2 dashes of orange bitters. Shook all of that, garnished it with a lime wedge. It was not good. There was definitely a lot of orange essence, like orange essential oil sort of smell that came out of it, which makes sense from the orange bitters.
Like a clean product.
Almost. Not quite that bad, but almost. And the second sip wasn't as bad, but then I just took the lime wedge and squeezed it into the drink, and now it's a little bit better. So, I don't know. I'm thinking it's user error and just the fact that I, A, made mistakes on what I actually had in my fridge, and B, substituted things strangely. But I had good reasons for it. Anyway, it's disappointing, and I wouldn't make it again, but at least it's better with that squeeze of lime juice. Anyway, on a better note, following this up, I have Drecker's Brains, which is double fruit smoothie sour. And this variety is blackberry, guava, and lemonade. So they release a bunch of these, all with different fruits and different additives. So I'm excited.
Yeah, periodically. Nice. That is a solid beer. Good call. Mm-hmm. At the very least, you have that to back you up.
What about you? What have you got?
I am having a screwdriver. I didn't quite have time to run out, so I'd originally put out a request to patrons for a drink recommendation, got a good one, and then realized I was out of whiskey that I didn't want to save, if that makes sense. And I didn't realize that, looking into my cabinet.
Out of cocktail whiskey.
Exactly, right. So I was like, oh shit, well, what do I have stuff to make a cocktail for? And I dug around the fridge, and I was like, oh, I can make a pretty acceptable screwdriver with everything that I have. And it's good. Instead of, I think I mentioned this before, but the screwdrivers that I was accustomed to, the first couple ones that I had a top of 7-Up or Sprite or something in addition to just the orange juice vodka. Instead of that, I did a little bit of lemon spindrift just to give it a little bit of carbonation without adding any kind of additional sweet or anything like that. And it's good. It tastes exactly how you want it to.
Perfect.
Yeah. No complaints at all. Literally, really, really stupid, simple vodka, orange juice, spindrift. That's it.
Nice. I don't know what it is. I think there was one night, and I didn't realize this until you just brought up screwdrivers, but I think there was one night where you and I made a bunch of really, really bad tequila sunrises. Mm-hmm. And now screwdrivers remind me of that for some, it's just a lot of one spirit and a lot of orange juice is a total turnoff for me.
That is interesting. Huh.
Do you remember that night?
I do recall that night because we had 2 big things of orange juice in the fridge that we had to get through because they were going to expire in a couple of days or we were leaving or something like that. And my dad had his office holiday party and they ended up with an extra bottle of Jose Gold that he did not want to keep at his home. So he gave it to us. That sounds right.
Oh, that was a bad decision.
Yeah. And then we just had a lot of screwdrivers. Yep. And that
I didn't realize I had a drink that I will not approach anymore, but that's it.
Yeah, you just thought about that right now?
Yep. So.
Legit. To follow that up, I'm having my favorite stout of late from a local brewery here out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Edward Teach's Wrongfully Mine. It's a breakfast stout with vanilla, coffee, maple syrup, and cinnamon. And it is awesome.
It sounds awesome. You should mail me some. No, don't do that. That's illegal. The mail is for sacred things only. Please mail that to me.
It's really good. It's really good. My dad, so we went out to a place a couple of weeks ago and he tried it because I'd bought a can. I think I'd bought cans of it and then I brought one over. We ended up trying it and he was like, that's one of the best beers I've ever had. And I was like, yeah, right? It's insane. And Bingham was like, yeah, this is amazing. So he went out this weekend and bought 16 cans. He cleaned out one of the local shops. And then gave me a 4-pack. I was like, thank you for introducing me to this beer.
That absolutely sounds like your dad.
Yeah. So it's, he's like, I got to keep some. I got to keep some for, when people visit, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's a good idea. So good. Cool. That's what I'm having. So
cool. Awesome.
With that, we go into the breakdown. So with that, we start off with Chapter 4. We start this chapter with a discussion between the remainder of Mylev's crew and Vin, in which she's given an interesting title. The Twixt, someone, and the title being held between the two thieving crews kind of as a point of communication. This is really more about the rumor building than anything else here. Among kind of the group of them, the importance of this job and Kelsier's return notoriety ahead of nearly anything else. We get some other interesting bits about Kelsier's history. What did you think of his fame and where he is now?
I felt like this was a really clean and natural way of letting us in on the myth that Kelsier has become. That said, becoming a famous or infamous thieves crew is probably more of a hindrance than anything else in the industry that they found themselves in. But anyway, it does give us some notion on the kind of person that we're dealing with. One that not only talks the talk, because he's very loud and charismatic and is definitely a big talker, but we learn that he, at least from the public's perception, he has earned that sort of ability to talk like that. So it's given him the right to act the way that he does in their eyes to a certain extent. But as far as his time in the pits go and the rumors, there is so much going on as far as like what's happened to him. And it seems a lot of it is completely based on the fact that he has a whole bunch of scars on his arms now, like and all of the theories are different, but that's how myths and rumors go, huh?
That is exactly how like this myth seems to perpetuate itself here, right? Like it continues to balloon in the minds of these, some of them are younger kids, and we can assume some are probably, young adults and whatnot, but they're having this conversation, and it has that air of rumor about it of like, well, I think he got it doing this, and I think he got it doing that. No, that can't be true. Like, it's got that sort of energy to it that you would imagine, kind of like, for me, I imagine like some of that talk kind of being similar to the like side talk in Aladdin that you might see other characters mention, except for in Aladdin, I think it's the guards that talk about those things, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So given this sort of situation and how high profile he is, and presumably how wanted he must be, it seems kind of odd how little concern a lot of the people that he interacts with seem to have for the fact that they're being seen with him. I know it's behind closed doors, but it's not like they're taking every single precaution to not be seen or anything like that. Like he is relatively out in the open, not entirely, but fairly so. And that's odd to me.
So in what way is he out in the open? How would you describe?
Well, I mean, he's going out and like collecting this crew, and maybe he has people delegated for that, but he's out on the street when the Steel Inquisitor came last chunk, and like was able to see them being followed. Like he was out in public during that time. Mm-hmm. And as far as I can tell, based on what we know about the pits and how it is astonishing that he survived it, let alone escaped, makes it seem like he should be basically top of the list for FBI's most wanted.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things that was mentioned, though, as well, is that they didn't want to lend credence to the rumors, so that's why a manhunt hasn't happened.
Okay,
because they didn't want.
I missed that.
That was in last week's reading, not this week's, but just kind of that. But I think in general he's being fairly cautious. The one exception, though, really being kind of him going and seeing Vin in last week. I mean, cautious to a degree, right? Like, obviously, he goes and blows up the Venture's castle here and keep in a second. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, there's that. There's also, like, the people interacting with him, the crew that he's assembled. They're not that concerned with the idea that they'll be associating themselves with him. And I know they all already know him to a certain degree, so maybe they don't care so much, but you'd think there would be more concern about how high profile he is as opposed to just how crazy this idea is.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a combination of things going on here and factors, and I think that their friend's been missing for years, and so he comes back, returns, and he's a Mistborn now. Like, and we get into some of that, I think, a little bit later, a little bit more as we kind of come to understand some more of these details, but I think that there's an allure, and that's why people originally showed up, and then they're staying around for the promise and the pay and the. I mean, we get like Clubs' reason very firmly, but we can talk about that more in a second. Does that at the very least dissuade?
Sounds good.
Okay, or not dissuade, but open up the door to the possibility.
I didn't have it so much as a sticking point. I just found it a little curious.
Yeah, sure. Any other thoughts on the things that the boys of My Love's crew have to say here?
Not explicitly, no. I think the scarring, going into that in a little bit more detail, the scarring on his arms, kind of diving in, there's the idea that he was strangling a monster from the inside and the teeth shredded his arms somehow. What were some of the other ones? I can't recall exactly.
From a fight with an Inquisitor, that's the other big one that I remember.
For killing an Inquisitor, right?
Was it for killing an Inquisitor, or was it
he killed an Inquisitor to escape? I think.
Yes. Yeah, but I think claim. That, and they were pointing to the scars, saying that was.
Yeah, I feel like there was one more, but I can't recall. But I'm just going to go ahead and throw my hat in the ring as far as where he got this from.
Okay.
So we know contextually that he says he can still feel them burning sometimes. We know they are like fine, thin scars. Mm-hmm. So I think he was tortured and was cut all over the place, all over his arms with a hot, sharp blade.
Okay.
That's my guess. Like it was all just torture.
Okay.
And
cool.
I have further reason for it that I think we'll get into later. But I think that actually feeds into something.
Okay. All right. That is a mighty fair prediction here.
Mm-hmm.
Vin's realization that her old goal in life as well of staying alive was kind of uninspired. That's right around the same section as she's kind of reflecting. And obviously that is a logical reaction on her part now that kind of the world's opened up. But it's this moment that she kind of becomes woven into this story's larger tapestry. She feels like this world begins to change and kind of unfold around her. I just kind of wanted your thoughts on what you think of Vin in the changes that we've even seen right now over the course of 80-ish pages, 70 pages.
I mean, she has been entirely like shielded from the possibility of anything else happening other than the trajectory that she was on. Even when talking about clubs later on, she notes that this is very, very high station for a ska. The fact that basically the only really step up for her at that, like, as far as she understood up until now, was maybe to become the leader of a crew at some point. Like, that is as far forward as her worldview allowed her to see forward, presumably. Like, this is me projecting on her, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But seeing that there was another path forward and sort of an intermediary step between like crew leaders and nobles, or even like a side path, it makes sense that suddenly she's allowing her imagination to sort of flourish a little bit, because she's really, really smart. And she has a really good grasp on the realities of the world. It's just her worldview has been so limited.
Yeah. I can't help but agree. And I think that it's really kind of an interesting... It's difficult to fully paint, right? Because I think that obviously we're still growing with Vin, and Vin is growing here. But it really kind of shows, especially using the example of clubs here is great. Like, there is hopelessness in being ska, but to like see her be filled with hope, I think is interesting. And she isn't fully there yet. She still holds a lot of those kind of resentments, grudges, and I don't even know if that'll change at any point. But it's, you know, it's nice to see that little glimmer, you know?
Right.
I said, you know, like 4 times there, but you know?
You know?
Yeah. Shortly thereafter, we are introduced to our first 2 crew members walking in together, that of Ham and Breeze. They're very different. Ham with his philosophical musings about free will, and Breeze with his poetic, silver-tongued stylings. We also meet Clubs, the smoker of the group, the owner of the shop that we were at later, and Yeadon, the leader of a ska rebellion who hired the group in the first place. Any thoughts on the group as we close out kind of this getting the gang together part of the meeting?
Yeah, so we get a lot of information on Allomancy here. Like, throughout this entire section, right away we understand that Ham is called a thug, and we do get a lot of information on Allomancy here in general. We, throughout this whole section ahead of the vault heist, which is where we get a whole lot more detail, but we get the understanding that Ham is called a thug, which uses pewter, which grants him a pretty great surge of strength, which is, I mean, kind of ironic that he is this like sort of philosophical, whimsical thinker of the group, but he's also the tank or the bruiser of a certain extent. Like, I know he's a big, imposing dude. We've got smokers. Well, okay. So Breeze is called a soother, right? Like, that's what Vin does with her luck. We've got smokers. And as far as I can tell, they can sense the use of allomancy. And maybe they can, like, maybe they're somewhat immune to it. I'm not positive on that. That's kind of ambiguous still at this point, but at the very least they can kind of understand the fact that they're being influenced and therefore can subvert the influence altogether, which, thinking about it that way, that made it interesting about the fact that Vin was pretty quickly able to pick up on the fact that she was being influenced by Breeze. And once she understood what was happening, she was completely like broken from that sort of spell. But just kind of getting away from the sort of nitty gritty of it all, this seems like a very fun, diverse group. And I feel like this is where the audiobook did a really, really good job of assigning additional characterization to every one of them.
Yeah. So there's obviously going to be a lot to kind of unfold here. What else? Obviously, there's also a little bit more that we get here later that delineates pushing and pulling inside of this conversation. What did you make of that as it was attached to Allomancy? Because obviously, like, that was kind of going back and forth, hand in hand, and pushing and pulling with capital letters, right? So, like, that's
yeah, that was interesting. First thought, and it got completely thrown out after a little bit, but first thought was that it was capitalized because it's less of a physical like action and more of terms specifically assigned to those opposing actions. That, like I said, got completely thrown out later on when we're talking about pushing steel and pulling iron, which is very much more literal in that they are like you are pushing it away from you or pulling it towards you. Was that also capitalized? I can't recall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. There was also a shorthand term used, iron push, steel push, as one word.
Well, push was steel, pull was iron.
You're
very
right.
explicitly.
Sorry,
like,
yep.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'm still trying to figure out if there's what the difference between iron and steel is in this respect. Like physically, what sort of metal difference they are using. But anyway,
what do you mean?
Steel is iron.
Well. Okay. Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that sure is interesting, isn't it? So
yep, that's kind of weird.
Did you have any other thoughts on pushing and pulling?
Nope.
I don't think I've had that awkward of a pause in this podcast of like a pregnant pause. On
sure, you have.
Anyway, in a while. I definitely have, but not in a bit. Ooh. So
my only thought here, because why not make you be more awkward? Iron, I guess, could be the less refined. It could be seen as more general, less refined component of steel. Mm-hmm. That's not quite true necessarily, but I could see it being that way. I don't know.
I have a question for you. Do you remember the 8 metals?
We have iron, steel, copper, tin, pewter, bronze,
zinc, and brass.
That's zinc and brass. Okay.
And
bronze, brass, copper are all going to be very, very similar. So I'm guessing that we know copper is used for, like, copper is the luck. That is the soothers. The inflaming, I'm guessing, is the brass. I'm going to guess brass.
We actually don't know the copper is.
We do.
No.
We do.
No.
Because Clubs is talking about later on, saying that he doesn't trust them with or without copper.
Correct.
Right? Like, doesn't that imply that copper is the metal used for soothing?
Nope. It doesn't.
All right. Interesting.
It implies something entirely different. But I'm so glad that you brought that up. So, all right, with that, we're going to move on because it's a fun spot to let you think about this shit.
Well, okay, so it implies something that I have no knowledge of then.
Potentially.
What do you mean potentially?
Well, I'm not here to connect dots for you.
There are no dots to collect.
Okay.
All right. Well, now I have to erase copper equals luck in quotation marks off my fucking whiteboard. I literally have it like
you have notes written out for this? That's super cool.
I'm taking notes like on my whiteboard while I'm listening to the audiobook and walking around my room.
No, that's good. That's good. It's funny.
Well, that's
okay, so
fucking wrong, man.
I'm sorry.
Or copper is what he uses then as a smoker. There we go. Okay. Cool.
Good work. It's kind of an indirect connection, and I don't feel too bad. I was just like, you were so confident about it that I'm like, well, no. I'm not gonna let that one sit week to week because it is on the page.
I just I listened to it the wrong way, and I had it so like, because he's so talking about how he doesn't trust them regardless of if they're actually using their powers in like the same breath. So I assumed that was the same sort of line of dialogue, but never mind.
In that way, we may as well ask, what does that mean a smoker is? Or do you have a guess as to what a smoker is?
So I have...
This is some chapter 5 shit, but we're here right now, so...
Yeah, we're here anyway. So I'm assuming that a smoker is somebody who can either... Well, definitely can sense when allomancy is being used in the area, much like the Steel Inquisitors can. And... God, I'm still trying to figure out if... I guess I just talked about it in the last answer. I think that because they can sense it, they can't be charmed by it to a certain degree. Like they can't fall under its spell because they know that it's a spell that's being cast on them.
Sure. Okay.
Like I was saying, Vin, once she understood that Breeze was using luck on her in her terms, then she did not have, like, she was conscious enough to not have to follow it.
Okay.
So I think having the understanding that allomancy is being used means that they are not, at least not as susceptible to its influence.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
That's my
I just wanted to, since we're here, let's, mention it offhand. So, with the group assembled in the room, we finally get to hear the pitch. The heist, to take down the final empire through the theft of the Lord Ruler's ATM, and if the opportunity arises, to kill him as well. What do you think of the goal and the rough outline of the plan that we get here?
This is absolutely as insane and absurd as it's made out to be from Vin's perspective.
Yeah.
Especially considering that Vin's a rookie here and she's just being kind of like thrown into the fire on this fucking insane heist. As far as I can tell, this is a very long entrenched structure of government, if you can call it government, of rule. And it's been...
Yeah, they've called it a theocracy, specifically in this chapter. So
I think I recall that. So there has been an active resistance for a millennium, for 1,000 years, that has made zero progress. None. Like, fucking nothing. So, the fact that that's the case makes this batshit crazy.
Yep, absolutely. It does kind of make this batshit crazy. It gives this insane impression of, this truly unachievable goal, like we've said a couple of times. This is often, this empire is referred to as the final empire. This is the end of choice of anything else. This is as good as things get in their own way, or as final as they are. So it's very interesting to kind of have this be kind of the goal of the story now that gets put in front of us, especially from Vin's perspective, kind of like you said, just the complete novice being like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying it is crazy from her perspective being the novice, but the fact that a novice is being brought in for this is also fucking insane.
Right, but she is a Mistborn. Don't forget.
But she is a Mistborn.
Mistborns are rare.
Incredibly
rare. So, with that, Kelsier also reveals a piece of information that he had stashed in his sleeve, the secret behind the location of where atium, one of the 2 advanced metals, and it comes from, which has long been hidden from the public. But of course, it was where he was sent. Atium is mined at the pits of Hathsin.
So, I'm really curious if there's ever been anyone else that escaped from the pits.
The answer there is no.
Or
they've said no.
No, as far as the public knows.
Well, okay, sure.
Like, I know, like, disinformation campaigns, Crossland.
Okay.
But also anybody who wasn't a prisoner there that worked there or guards there or something like that. Like, there are people that exist that know about this place, and how well tied up they are is kind of a mystery. And I'm sure there are more people that know about it that will either be friends or foes. And I'm really excited to find out.
All right.
Hot take.
Hot take.
There's more people.
Hot take. More people know. More survivors. No, I mean, and that's you're allowed to have hot takes here and there.
I'm not necessarily saying survivors. Like, there can be people that were there as, like, I don't know, prison guards.
Oh, right. Yeah, more people who might know more about the Fits of Hatson.
Yeah,
I'm sure there has to be those, right?
Right.
But who are they? I don't know.
But who?
But who? Vin's reaction to all this, both throughout and in culmination, is one of shock and silent judgment. What do you make of her assessment of these men?
She is super cautious of fucking everything. I mean, it makes sense. She is nervous, twitchy, skittish, however you want to call it. But it's because of the way that her life has gone up until this point. Like, she hasn't had a good time. So for that reason, I guess, I think no matter what, she's going to be on the lookout for anything that might be a threat to her.
Mm-hmm.
And these men are pretty bold characters.
Yeah.
So, like, there's got to be something going on in her brain. Like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, obviously, like we've mentioned before, Vin has this kind of very damaged persona about her. And it definitely defines the way that she reacts to things, like having her back to doors. She never has her back to doors. She always looks at multiple exits, kind of keeps all those things in mind at all time. And I think I agree with you. I think that, she is definitely assessing all of these people individually as threats. And yeah, kind of a sad life where she doesn't really have friends. Even like the one friend, she still has Ulef, right? But like, even her one friend basically sold her out to Cayman, and she got a chair thrown at her.
Yeah. Almost got, like, beat to death.
Yeah. So
like, the chair was just to get her to stop running.
Yeah. Right.
And she's also super, like I said before, she's really smart. Like, she knows what's going on, but she uses that in a way that's really fucking paranoid. Like, she is absolutely making very calculated decisions on where to sit down, make sure she can see all the exits at all time. Like, she is on top of it, and probably not in a healthy way.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe not.
I mean, it certainly is healthy from a survival perspective, but I'm sure that is mental health wise, maybe a little bit taxing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that it's taxing. That's got to be just grating on her mind to be on edge at all times. I mean, I know when I'm stressed about something, the way that like your back feels tense all the time, and it just builds and builds and builds and accumulates. So yeah, I mean, oh, you want better for our poor girl Vin.
Yeah,
for sure. The Lord Ruler is also given another title here instead of this conversation, the Sliver of Infinity, before Kelsier also presents his means of killing the Lord Ruler in addition to his reason behind going on this endeavor to begin with. The Lord Ruler is responsible for the death of Mare, someone who is close to Kelsier. He then brings out something only whispered about in the northern part of the world, the 11th metal.
Yes. This northern part of the world, I think, in this same space, he also mentions that they remember the name of the old kingdom. So that brings even more mystery to whatever this world is. It also mentions the Ascension, which is capitalized, I'm assuming is some sort of event. And my guess is that's when the Lord Ruler rose to power and ascended into godhood or the Sliver of Infinity or whatever you want to call it at this point. Not sure what to make of that, but whole lot of real kind of big Inception events alluded to here.
Yeah, and also like the 11th metal in general, right? Like what do you think the 11th metal could be?
Aluminum? I don't know.
Tinfoil?
No, we already have tin.
Yeah, you're right. My bad.
Mercury, maybe?
Poison. Literally poison.
Well, I mean, you don't have to like shave filings into some sort of metal solution and put it in a vial. You can just put the whole fucking thing in a vial.
It's true. It's true.
Pretty
But wouldn't it be a
sci-fi
liquid?
looking.
He pulls out an ingot, right?
Oh, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe he's very, very cold.
Oh, man. Okay, with that...
No, he does. He does pull out another ingot, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does pull out an ingot. It's an ingot for sure. With that, Chapter 5. Our first prophecy of the week is one that introduces the deepness as the stark, grave threat that is consuming the world as it spreads. Any thoughts or musings on this prophecy?
My only thought, and is based on really not much at all, is that it has something to do with the mist. Even given that, I have no fucking idea, man. I've got no clue.
Any more thoughts as to who our hero is here?
You're going to hate me for my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like my answer is kind of spoilery. The audiobook voice is very, very similar to Vin's, if not the same.
Okay.
The vocal inflection that is used. So I can't get that out of my head.
Sure.
But
yeah, I mean, you're allowed to think that. Welcome to being misled.
Fair.
Or are you?
I don't know. But I was really thinking it was going to be Vin.
You were last week. Yeah. So.
Still on that train.
Did you know, I mean, you actually probably do know, I don't know if we even mentioned this in our episode 0 or 1, but Michael Kramer, we've listened to before, he did Daniel Green's book as well.
Oh.
Breach of Peace, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep, same guy.
Awesome.
Same audiobook narrator. Also, Kate Redding in Breach of Peace, because there was also a female perspective and team up on some books, but not these from Brandon Sanderson. They do on the Stormlight Archive, which is a different series, but yeah, cool. That's
Nice.
it. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So from there, we resume the story still in Cayman's old hideaway, digging around to get at some more wine. It's clear through these like little vignettes that we get that the closest people on this crew together are Dox and Kelsier, really kind of holding down the leadership as, kind of right hands, leader in right hand. Kelsier in this moment as well mentions something, that he used his ATM at Trestings and to buy Orsur's contract. What do you think an Orsur is or could be, and what might that contract be?
So, based on the name, I'm guessing it has to do with refining ore into metal.
Okay.
Guessing further, I think this contract is a way of establishing a backstory for the noble that they have, noble in heavy quotes, working on their behalf. What is his name? Renew.
Mm-hmm. Renew.
Yeah.
Renew. Lord Renew.
Renouse.
Renouse. Yeah, right. Lots of fun pronunciations.
So I'm guessing that's what the contract's all about. An Orsur is some sort of
Orsur.
I mean SURE.
Yep.
Sure.
Sur.
I don't know. Sure.
No, Sur.
Sur.
Sur, let's move on. Yeah, can't tell you why exactly it's pronounced the way it is. So one of the interesting things here is that Michael Kramer, like most audiobook narrators, are handed a definition of words and how the author wants them pronounced and things like that. And this seems like one of those. It also seems like one that should maybe be Oresur or something like that. But yeah, I mean, pronunciation, whatever. I'm basically running by the audiobook for the most part, per usual. So
yeah, that's fair.
Or sure. or sewer.
I mean, ore sure sounds like an American like ore refining company.
Sounds like
doesn't it?
Exxon. Yeah. It totally does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Fun. What I've also decided is that you make enough predictions throughout the episode that I'm just going to start snagging these.
Yeah,
and,
go for it.
Italicizing them for future use. I was like, that's just better. So Clubs, at least initially, walks out of this meeting as well. He comes back in this chapter to agree, afraid that he could have been emotionally manipulated by Breeze in the room. We obviously talked a little bit about this earlier, but what do you make of his paranoia around Breeze and Soothers? We talked about the ability and whatnot, but like, what do you think about the other component here? His sort of paranoia and his worry.
I think it makes total sense. I think contextually, he is a man that has spent most of his adult life providing refuge for mistings that are being hunted. And I think because of that, it's just in his nature to be overly cautious. And I'm sure that in that sort of line of work, he has seen things go really, really sideways as a result of manipulation by a soother. So I'm sure he's lost, if not one, many, many people that sort of manipulation. So that's my read on it, at least.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good to me. I mean, I'm excited. And I think that you're definitely correct kind of on the way that he thinks about this, and especially in the way that he kind of comes to the conclusion here as to like why he's deciding to join the mission on the whole, being that eventually he's going to be found and killed. Like, there's that complication as well. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
Just a matter of time. So we leave the scene having almost all the crew in place for this job and head up to the roof in Kelsier's perspective. We see Luthadel at light, no longer just a ash-blackened city, but one that is obscured, hidden, and shadowed. Distant spires glow. It's just so cool, and Kelsier taking off into it is truly something else. We'll talk about that more in a second, but any thoughts on the vista that we get here?
This mist is super eerie and creepy, and I am so intrigued. I love it. But if we're going to talk about Kelsier taking off into the night, like, I'll save it for whenever we talk about that, because that's super fucking cool.
We can just like jump into that here too. But before we do that, we'll talk about kind of the jumping thing and sort of one of the things here. But before we do that, there's a conversation that happens before he truly takes off, where he's kind of talking about Mare, he's like internally monologuing about Mare, her being a tin eye. And we also get other little details. Kelsier's powers, of course, appeared later when he snapped. What thoughts do you have on snapping as it is?
Yeah. So here's a couple things. Did we bring this up earlier?
We did a little bit, but we didn't fully talk about it.
All right. Oh, we talked about him being tortured. Okay.
Yes, but we didn't talk about this part.
And here's why. There are a lot of assumptions to this, and I think I'm right on all of them. No, I'm not going to go that far. But I think there are a lot of very specific circumstances that led to his allomantic powers coming to be, two of which are extreme physical pain and extreme emotional pain, being like those two being torture and the loss of Mare. Another is the fact that this is within the immediate vicinity of an atium mine, which is a powerful metal of some sort, but we don't know exactly what it does yet. Right? Like,
yeah, it's so powerful that, like the Lord Ruler keeps tight claws on it.
Yeah, we just don't know what it does yet. But I'm thinking that it somehow gets into his bloodstream through the torture, and the emotional pain like triggers something, and it awakens these powers. And what's more is I don't think this was accidental. I think he was an experiment. And he was meant to be broken in this way, and for the allomancy to be awakened, and for him to be made a Mistborn. What wasn't meant to happen was for him to retain his own will, his own free will, and for him to escape. So that's, I'm guessing he was being made into a weapon for the Lord Ruler.
Interesting.
Which is also why I don't think he's the only one.
The only escapee. Okay.
Not necessarily the only escapee. I'm sure he very well may be the only escapee.
Okay, yeah. Same
more
person
more people that have gone through what he went through.
Yeah.
That didn't escape and are under the control of the Lord Ruler, but are just as formidable.
All right. That's great. It's
a long-winded, large guess, but that's my thought on what's happening with this dude.
Yeah. It's I really like that. I really kind of like the idea of this having this potential to be kind of a recruiting tool of sorts. Like this end of life torture in its own way could also be a recruiting tool for some nefarious purpose for the Lord Ruler. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
With that, we also get the description I was kind of skirting around last week, that of the mist cloak. This was the thing that I was trying to hide, because just about every version of Mistborn, except for the paperback novel, has this mist cloak with a character inside of it. And
okay, that's totally fair though. Like, this is still very early in the book.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's that crazy of a spoiler. All that I'm saying is that it's such a cool visual to get described to you, like the idea that these like tethers tied together up until the shoulders, and it flows around and there's hundreds of them. It gives this very interesting image.
Just in our Discord, there was a picture that popped up.
Yeah, fucking Tim Olsen.
No, but it was after I'd already read. So it was okay.
Oh, okay, got it.
Like, all good. But I think I appreciate the fact that I read it first. But it's hard to really deviate from that design. It's pretty set in stone as far as what it looks like. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of room for interpretation. There's a little bit, but it was cool to visualize it and then see it be illustrated by somebody.
Yeah, that's less of an illustration, and that's actually a depiction inside of Fortnite.
Oh, I was thinking about something else.
Did he send it somewhere else? I don't know that he
did. What was I looking at then? No, there was some other picture that was posted somewhere that I saw, and I thought it was in the Discord.
There is one in the Discord, but it's right here.
No, I'm thinking about something else entirely.
I don't think there was another one sent that I'm aware of at the very least.
Then I don't know what to say.
Unless it was a book cover, which it very well could have been. Because, even the book cover is kind of a giveaway. As mentioned previously.
I can't remember.
One of the standard covers, so.
Nope, wasn't that one either.
Okay. Well, there's like two more, but they're basically all the same. You get the point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it all looks the same.
Right. But it's just a very cool image, and it gives, this unique aesthetic, and, like Jedi wear gi effectively. Like they borrow something that already exists. A lot of the time, they've got that like robe monkish thing going on, and this is completely different. This is something wholly unique, and I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you think of any creative reason that Sanderson might have chosen this? Out of curiosity.
There's a contextual reason that it is supposed to imitate and blend in with the mist.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the only thing that was really that's good enough. Me. So. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. God, it's gonna bother me then. Like, where did I see this?
Yeah, we'll have to find it later. Yeah. With that, we, we talked about the Mistcloak itself, but we also get an image and depiction of Mistborn carrying glass daggers to protect themselves against the seemingly inevitable violence that kind of occurs against them and that we'll see later in this chapter. Because, of course, these weapons can't be yanked out of their hands by other elementic abilities or pushed or pulled or anything like that. But Kelsier also makes the decision to take off in the night to go for House Venture.
Yeah. This description, like in tandem with the Mistcloak, like that kind of obviously takes the spotlight a little bit. But the glass daggers was really a nice touch on that. It makes total sense. The fact that it's made note that like we know that glass is not as great of a weapon choice material wise as like any sort of metal is. So like the first thing he does is check to make sure there's not nicks and like chunks taken out of them. So that just felt like a good kind of grounding point. I really like that.
Yeah. It kind of shows that they're meant more for pretty much just directly for stabbing and wouldn't necessarily be great for like blocking other things, and it shows like a very different side of weapons, you know? Right, exactly. Like
no,
it's very interesting to be wielding something so fragile, but you know, still capable of killing someone. So it's it's good there for sure.
Faux show.
All right, man. Now we get a ton of medals used off the bat when he jumps off of the roof to show how a Mistborn moves throughout the world and night in Luthadel. Steel and iron used in conjunction to move off of different objects, kind of both pushing or pulling to kind of move him around, throwing out coins to bounce and propel himself further. It's just so cool.
Yeah. This was amazing. Like this and leading into like this entire chapter basically was a nonstop like stream of just such cool action. And in my head, from the time he leaves the roof to like the end of this like allomancy sort of sequence, it felt like no cuts camera, like following the hero through this intricate fight scene kind of deal. Like single take. It just felt so good. And I know we haven't really talked a whole lot about adaptation yet because we haven't gotten that far into this book, but we talked a lot about that in the last series. And I feel like this is like a written out choreograph. Would that be the right way to put it?
Poor timing at taking a drink there.
This is like the choreography written in script form.
Yes, it is well choreographed.
Well, I don't know if that's like, this is obviously so like particular, but choreography is when you write out what's going to happen. Is that yet the choreography, or is the choreography the physical adaptation of what's written?
I think choreography is when it's executed, but I would say it's choreographed because that gives you the
instructions.
Like, yeah, right.
Okay. Anyway, this read like that, and it felt so good.
Yeah, it's and we'll talk a lot about the action in a second here, but I also forgot to mention like the blue lines that come out when he starts to burn the steel and iron as like details to like show him where the other metals are in the area so that he kind of knows what he can react to and push and pull off of. It's just so fucking cool. Like the lines out of the chest, the whole flying in the air thing, the kind of mist around him, this idea of like, it makes Batman look really shitty. Like, like it Batman's really already like a shitty superhero, right?
Oh,
in
but
concept.
there was such a good, and by good I mean like so. I rolled my eyes so hard at it, because it reminded me of like a cheesy line you'd get from Batman, and it was so brooding. It was like a dark creature like me, or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about? I feel like it was like at the beginning of this chapter. because it's Kelsier that says it.
It must be when he's talking with people right at the beginning, right?
Or no, it's when he's on the roof. It's like describing the city. Oh yeah, here we go. It was a land of swirling mystery and strange creatures like me, Kelsier thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like that made me roll my eyes. Like, but I immediately thought of Batman for some reason. So it's interesting that you brought up Batman.
I mean, that's a fair enough point, and that is definitely a funny line in that way, right? It's also interesting because Kelsier is so like self-defacing a lot of the time. Like his humor a lot of the time is like, yes, well, we can't all be like you, or we can't all like it gives this kind of like, yes, I am nothing kind of an appeal, and obviously he's, kind of being over the top. But that line, because it's internal dialogue, has this tone of seriousness, and I think it's also delivered with a tone of seriousness versus Kelsier's usual like sarcasm and snark. But
I don't know what it was. It just felt off and like,
that's okay.
I don't know, brooding teenager kind of vibes.
Yeah. We also get like pewter being burned here as he's like landing on things and kind of like crashing into things to absorb the impact on his body and components like that. It's so cool. It's such a unique system. Mm-hmm. Like you said, we haven't talked about adaptation, but like this is ready for it. Like this is rife with opportunity. No doubt.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Brandon Sanderson has written several treatments. I think at one point he was working on a movie with a production company, and I think that fell out. And then I think talks have restarted in some fashion more recently, but I don't remember the details. I will definitely come back with a report on those for the next episode, just to have a little bit more. But there has been a couple of attempts to get this kind of off the ground over the years. So.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we also get the description, we also get, from there, we arrive at Keep Venture. I just get this straight up Boondock Saints, there was a firefight moment, right? Like you said, you have that one take, you've got this guy landing and making this big scene, slitting a guy's throat open, landing on his chest, pushing off the breastplate, with like the magic metal push. The like decapitation of another dude, throwing another man out the window, later coming back to that body and kind of like laughing at it while it's on the ground there. You're like, oh, he's like mush. And there's just so much incredibly well choreographed violence here. As a kid, when I grew up, I loved Magneto, and like you'd always, I don't know if you were this way, but when I was a kid, imagining being a superhero, the person that I wanted to be was Magneto, so I actually wanted to be a villain. But just the idea of like controlling metal in this way is so fascinating. Yeah. And you always think about like what could you do, and with like the way that he uses coins throughout the combat, the way that all of this kind of works itself together. I want to hear from you though. What did you think about this action scene?
Man, the whole. I'm trying to think of like a specific part that stands out, and none of it does because all of it does,
Mm-hmm.
Like this is so starkly different from the fight scenes that we get from Pierce Brown. And I love those fight scenes. I love the way Pierce Brown like writes fight scenes. This is completely different. This is so much more like, man, I hesitate to use the word sterile, but like clinical, I guess. Like it is just clean, and it's not flowery. There's no words minced at all, but it goes in depth. It just felt like we should have had sort of an introduction to how all of this works, but instead he's just like, nope, we're giving you an entire fucking like heist all at once, and you're going to get all of it in one take and mic drop. It was amazing. And I fell in love with this scene. I listened to it a ton of times in my audiobook while I was working. Mm-hmm. Like I just kept listening to it. And it is one of those things where if you get distracted, or like I would be like reading an email or working on a 3D model or something like that. And if I got distracted once, I had to like back up and listen to the whole thing. You have to listen to all of it or read all of it in one take without getting distracted at all, which is hard for me. So I did have to listen to a bunch, but it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, it's remarkable, truly. Like, it is incredible in all of its components, right? Like, we get the combat with the initial guards that show up. We get like the ones that he takes down the ground, sure. The guy that I mentioned slicing his throat open. But we get the first ones that rush to the scene, the ones that are wearing steel breastplates, and one guy pulls out a dagger, and Kelsier like literally just uses the pole to like throw it and slash his throat. Like, it's so good. And the other guy realizes that he's a Mistborn, and so he's trying to take off the breastplate because he doesn't want it to be used against him, and like taking off his armor as quickly as he can. But of course, most of that's too late. We see the Haze Killers, of course, enter, which is, you know, certainly its kind of own interesting thing here. These are specialized killers who don't use or wear any metal that could be manipulated, and I think it's an interesting and necessary force in the world in which, now, as we know, after this scene, metal is kind of dangerous if you're anywhere near a Mistborn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of sort of understating it.
A little bit. Yeah, it's, you know, I have a lot of metal around me right now, and I'm painfully aware of it. I'm painfully aware of it at this point. Because I could get fucking crumpled at any moment, I feel like. Yeah. I felt like the way that this gives us an intense deep dive into Mistborns and Mistings in general and how much of a powerful force they are. It really gave us perspective on that. The fact that this security detail, these Haze Killers, an integral part to the security of the home, because this is a real threat and they are going to be a part of every nefarious group, every army, anything that is formidable is going to have this sort of threat. So, dedicating manpower to exclusively deal with them is smart, but kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. And as we kind of learn from Doxson, House Venture is one of the biggest houses, if not the biggest house. So this is definitely a great house to be attacking, especially after the violence that had been enacted. You know, this is bound to create some paranoia and chaos, which, as we learn later, is kind of Kelsier's goal as a part of the group. So that's interesting in and of itself. But you know, it's just this scene, like you said, the one-shot idea of this is so great. It reminds me of those Daredevil one-shot, one-take scenes, which are so good, so excellent, the best. Yeah, it's just, oh my god. And the Haze Killers themselves, absolutely necessary as a force. So, of course, there's a ton more that happens here. Kelsier kills a bunch of people with coins. We see other coin shots beginning to attack him, and kind of having some of those be deflected. He's not getting overwhelmed, but he can't continue to kill everyone. He's caused enough chaos. Murders a couple of people with an ingot of metal, like a whole fucking bar, throws some more out of the building. There's just a ton that goes on here before we escape, with some boxing notes and the ATM that he came for in the first place in a small bag. Yeah.
Like I said, I read through this thing so many times. Most of them through the audiobook, like, cause I was working. And we only had 2 days between when we last recorded.
True.
And I can't read ahead, so...
Yeah, I also had to listen today, so...
Yep, exactly. But this was a joy. An absolute, like, the most fun I've had reading in a while. And that's saying a lot, because I had a blast with basically every book you put in front of me, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is truly... an incredible action scene, and it's so great to have here. I do agree. Anything else on this? I kind of left the notes themselves fairly sparse here because I figured we'd kind of talk about random things, but anything else?
I, short of like going through and writing move by move what happened out, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so.
Fair enough. So with that, we get into chapter 6. We also get our second prophecy of the week, which again goes back to the deepness and something that is pulsing in our hero's mind from the distance as though it's calling them. They also state that Terrace is apparently the only place that this can be done. Thoughts?
Well, first of all, isn't this the third prophecy?
No, because we don't technically have a first. Because we read it last week. Yep.
So it is the second one. Either way, I've got no idea. Like, this is literally me. Like, you're asking me to just shoot in the dark. I have no idea what is going on here. The deepness, maybe it's part of the mist, is all I'm running on. So
okay, running on fumes.
They're fun. I enjoy reading them. I'm still thinking it's Vin, but that's all I know.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sure these are very profound and important pieces of like the story later, but I just feel lost.
All right. Sounds good. So we start the chapter proper, of course, with Vin in her room. And man, we talked about this a lot, but I find it strange. It's a comforting kind of strangeness, I think, to her as a character. And the way that her spirit has truly been broken by everything that she's gone through, by her brother and the society at large here definitely stings deep. I'm glad she's being afforded these comforts now, of course, and hope that someday she can come to see them as such. But right now, it stings.
Yeah. It was really eye-opening for me to start the chapter this way, and her mentioning the idea that being given this spacious private room devalues the amount of struggle that she had to go through for comparative morsels of privacy in the past. It did a really good job of allowing me to really but it allowed me to empathize with her in her sort of strange, conflicted feelings of what she's going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, I completely like undercut my own thought by like fucking up the word empathize.
You can say it again if you want.
No, continue.
All right. I'm
cool with that.
Give you enough time to take. Yeah. I mean, it does provide this odd problem and conflict, right? Like, these things have always been readily available, or like are readily available, and she just hasn't had access to them. That feels mean and cheap, and like, this is really like the moral quandary of, we have homes for sale, but we have homeless people, right? Like, this is kind of a similar problem where you continue inside of these systems for long enough, and you kind of see these means afforded to you eventually, and it's like, well, why didn't this happen sooner? And it sucks, and it's reality, and I think that hopefully one day, Vin can come around to this. But yeah.
Right.
It's brilliantly written, I think, here.
Yeah, I really agreed.
To give us these, kind of like you said, these conflicted feelings of empathy and whatnot. Yeah. So we also see inside of Clubs' shop, and I think it's a great little scene because it is so starkly different from the rest of the world that we've seen so far. It's very well put together. There's no, as Vin even notes, there's no ash piled in the corners. There's some hustle and bustle as people are kind of going about their jobs. There's this air of a respected nature about it. And I think that's great, especially from the character that we've previously been introduced to as Paranoid. It's just kind of a nice, like, flavor on top of it all,
Mm-hmm. For sure. We also get some more insight into Vin and how she thinks and her perspective on things. Specifically, I think we have to go back a little bit to one of the previous questions. She hasn't had exposure to what's out there. Like, I think I mentioned this before. Like, Clubs is a pretty well-off ska in most respects as far as ska go. So she's absolutely stunned that someone in his position would just throw it away, as it were, because he's living a pretty charmed life from her perspective. So she This is a fun perspective to see things through. It really kind of is.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because this is, I said it time and time again, but this is truly like so starkly different, and so like well defined that it does paint this picture of what ska could have, what certain ska can have, but also to your point, kind of points to the unfairness and the injustice of it all, because obviously there are plantation ska that exist, and opportunities do not appear to be equal, of course.
Right. But so that said, these unequal opportunities are, as she says, extremely rare.
Yep.
And
also aspirational.
Aspirational. She mentions that, like, for him to be in this station, like, of this station, he must be a master craftsman. So, or master carpenter, I think is what she calls him. So,
yeah. We're also introduced to Lestibornes, a strange thin boy and Clubs' nephew who speaks in a very distinct accent and is also known to be a tin-eye. What did you make of Lestibornes?
I mean, other than just he is a decent amount of comic relief throughout this, I don't know, I found it funny. I didn't know what to make of him otherwise. He was this awkward boy with... I couldn't tell if it was entirely just a heavy accent or a straight up like language barrier. So I don't know. He was fun. I'm excited to see where he goes, if anywhere. Like we get Kelsier just straight up like calling him out at some point, like when they're trying to choose the noble stand-in. He like speaks. He's like, "Well, nope. Somebody else." I don't know. I enjoy him.
Yeah. He's fun. Like you said, he's an oddball. It does give us kind of a different taste of what this world has to offer in its own right too. Like this is a completely different aspect, and like the wuzzing, the wearing, and like the sort of way that he goes about speaking and delivering information, and the sort of language barrier goes to show that, hey, this world isn't, really, it isn't a monoculture, which is kind of what we've been presented with so far.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of potential, and he's Clubs' nephew, like that also, like he's related to Clubs. Is Clubs from the other city? Like how exactly does that work? How did Clubs end up being in charge of him,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he's presented as Clubs' nephew. We don't necessarily know that's entirely
Are you calling
true.
Clubs a liar?
Well, I'm calling Clubs somebody who has said himself that he takes great care in hiding other mistings from being found out. Like, I'm sure that's a way of kind of obscuring why he's with them, like calling them a distant nephew. I feel like that makes sense.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So we then get into everyone re-arriving back here. We know that they're going to stay here so that they can all hide together, so that they can kind of plan and plot together and work through most everything within Clubs' shop. But we also get into discussing the framework of how this is all going to go down and the kind of arguments and conversations therein around the heist to happen. Effectively going through what could be called kind of a brainstorming session of sorts. We're going to approach it basically by the topics that Kelsier mentions. Kind of in order. So, the first thing that we have to deal with here is the Luthadel garrison. What did you make of their plan to distract the garrison by going and attacking the pits of Hathsin?
Oh man. I think it sounds like a horrible idea. I think it isn't going to work in the slightest. Because I think it's an obscure enough thing that is important enough that it feels like the Lord Ruler wouldn't necessarily want to just let that entire garrison know about the existence of this mine at the pits, and would rather probably have something dedicated to the pits that's hidden and like in wait. I don't know.
Like a different force.
A different force entirely that they're not aware of.
Got it. Okay. All right. So
but also, just in general, like, that's a whole lot of assumption being placed on the idea that you're going to draw out like exactly what you need to draw out from this one simple trick.
This one simple trick will overthrow the Lord Ruler. The clickbaity headlines are everywhere.
Deities hate him.
Deities hate him. Yes. Oh my god. That's perfect. Lord Ruler, not anymore. Fantastic. So there's also the general chaos clause, right, which is seemingly assigned to Kelsier, and to at the very least a minor extent given a little bit from Vin. What'd you make of the sort of chaos clause?
I mean, chaos is just kind of everything that's happening here. I like how chaos was just kind of added to the board without any other augmentations. It's just chaos happens here. Like, we need chaos in general fucking everywhere.
Yeah, right. And Kelsier, of course, is like, well, I can handle that. Through like the way that he's going to do chaos is through the great houses, right? Through sowing discord and causing infighting among the great houses, right. Including what we've already seen him do right now. Right.
Yeah, that was a really cool way to tie that all together and make it one that heist was important for us, the readers, for understanding what's happening and kind of getting jumped in to a certain extent to this sort of the mechanisms of this world. 2, for the actual tangible thing that Kelsier needs, he gets it through this. And 3, it creates this chaos that he's talking about later and explicitly is called out as like, this is the seed that we're going to grow and bring house wars from this, because who else has Mistborns that are fighting off other houses? Fucking nobody.
Wait, who has Mistborns that are fighting off other houses?
Other houses, presumably.
Oh, yeah. Make the Mistborns fight each other, basically.
Well, make the houses fight each other by making them believe that the Mistborns from the other houses are invading.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, just making sure. Yeah.
Subterfuge, Crossland.
Yes. Subterfuge. Come on, get with the program. Yeah.
Get busy subterfuging or get busy leaving.
Get busy subterfuging or get busy dying. I don't know. Probably dying. Everyone's dead here. So from there, we also, within the Great Houses, have Vin, right? And Vin's job, of which is, of course, the last assigned. We'll talk about it now, and we'll kind of come back to a little bit of it here in the end. But what do you think of Vin's job and sort of the way what was put on her?
That's going to be fun, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be fun to see her sort of quick and rapid are synonyms. Very accelerated path to becoming a passable noble. I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit shaky to start because 1, she is not a noble, and 2, she's really fucking timid.
She's fairly paranoid. Like, this is exactly the opposite of her.
I don't know if that's necessarily fighting against her, though. Like, I'm sure there are some nobles that are pretty paranoid. I don't think that's
sure
a giveaway, but either way, like, she's going to have to learn how to act.
True. Yeah, she's definitely going to have to pick up behavior for sure. Mm-hmm. That's definitely something. So yeah, we've got a lot that's going to be put on Vin's plate. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later here once we get kind of a couple of more things out of the way with Vin. But we also have the ATM, stealing the ATM from the vault. This kind of ties into everything a little bit. So this is sort of the end goal, the end result of once we get the garrison out, we can then go to the ATM and secure it and steal it with the troops that we have on the inside, because the garrison will have left and gone to defend the pits of Hathsin.
Presumably.
Presumably, yes.
If all goes to plan.
if all goes according to plan, the ATM is kind of the final thing. So that brings us to the troops, though, right? Like, that brings us to what needs to happen with the troops. We've got recruiting, training, and equipping, kind of the three different components here with the troops. Recruiting, of course, is left up to Breeze to do the soother and his soothers to convince the Scad to join the rebellion. They're looking for about 10,000 Goodmen.
Goodmen.
Goodmen. They're looking for 10,000 people. That's seemingly a lot.
That's quite a few people.
The garrison has half. That's half the garrison, I should say.
I would say that is a big number of people.
Big people.
Big number. Big people.
Big people number. Yeah.
Well, I guess it can be small people. Big number, small people.
It could be. Yeah.
I don't know if Ska are relatively diminutive. I'm sure they're malnourished to a certain extent. They're probably small.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yep. We've got training the soldiers, which is left up to Ham.
Right.
Yep. Mr. Leaderman, who also is going to be able to recruit and pull some other people to help train from his days kind of as a mercenary and from his experiences that he has with other sympathetic Ska, I think is kind of the sort of term that he uses.
Mm-hmm. And his name
some are guards.
Hammond, correct?
Hammond, yes. I forgot if it was said in this chapter or not. So
it was.
I was trying to avoid. Yeah, okay. It's Hammond, yes. So Hammond, yep.
Yep, that makes sense.
But he's going to pull some of the troops, some Ska from the garrison, probably a handful, whoever he can kind of pull who are sympathetic to the cause. Of course, he will try to take. And Yeadon, of course, reacts negatively to this as kind of the resident leader of the Ska rebellion, and has a very negative kind of reaction and connotation to the idea of Hammond taking the troops.
All right,
what do you think?
He has a negative reaction to fucking everything, and he's the one that hired him.
Uh-huh.
Like, he has a negative reaction to the idea that they're going to be doing this in the first place. Like,
right?
I don't get it. He's well, I do to a certain extent. I think they even mentioned, like, it seems like as he's hearing it said out loud, he realizes how crazy it is and is kind of like shying off a bit. Mm-hmm. But man, be gung ho, right?
He's also already paid, right? Totally, be gung ho. Like, get your shit together, Yeadon.
Yeet. Anyway,
yeet, Yeadon, yeet. But don't Yeadon, you know? Something like that. And then we've got equipping as well. Equipping is a conversation for these guys. It is something that's going to have to happen earlier, and it is something that we will talk a lot more later, but is ultimately going to be left up to Kelsier via Lord Renew. We'll talk more about that in a second, so we'll skip that for now. And then, of course, there's the Lord Ruler himself, of which I think Kelsier just writes down the 11th medal underneath.
Does he even write that? I don't know if he does.
I don't recall.
I think he just throws it on the table, the little dick statue of metal, whatever it is.
Ink it? Dick statue.
There's nothing contextual for that. I just felt like it'd be funny.
Kelsier, General Mayhem.
Oh, right. General Mayhem was under Chaos, right?
Yep. Preparation Rule beneath the Ska Rebellion. So Yeadon,
this did feel very Fight
Rebellion.
Club to a certain extent.
It does. But yeah, it's kind of left to interpretation, actually. I don't think it's quite there. And the Lord Ruler, I'm still planning to deal with him personally. I just have to figure out how to make the 11th medal work. So, Kelsier responsible for the Lord Ruler. Yeah. Cool little plan. We've got our little plan.
Cool little plan.
Very Fight Clubby.
Yeah, very Fight Clubby. And I know partially it's because they use the term mayhem. So like it's hard to really separate that, but even trying to disregard that, it still feels kind of that way.
I mean, like every heist movie plan, right? Like it's got It's got those elements of like, okay, this is that. Ocean's 11 has the same kind of thing, right? Like, okay, you're going to do this, and then we get the cut, the Soderbergh cut, and then we get this, and then that, and yeah. By the way, isn't it funny that we talked about heist movies like a week ago, and now we're talking about a heist book?
Yeah.
For the record, I thought that was super ironic when we were talking about that episode.
Yeah, it's great. It's fucking awesome. If you have not heard about it, you can catch us on High Key Obsessed talking about Logan Lucky in Thomas's series on heist movies. We came and guest starred on his show talking about Logan Lucky, which was a very good heist movie.
And a very good time.
I had a blast. I'm so pumped every time we go on his show. I love it.
Yeah. It's always a good time. So there's a little line here that happens as well with Vin that has to do with, she says, Lord Ruler, basically cursing and swearing out like what all has to happen here specifically. And Kelsier says, don't use his name as an oath, Vin. When you curse by that creature's name, you acknowledge him as your god. And wow, like, ooh.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is something that you find in a ton of different stories, and it's always seemed like a little bit much to me. I don't know how to describe it, but a lot of the stories that I've like read or experienced or watched or whatever it might be, they put so much of a focus on like the idea that we don't use God as the curse, we use something else. And it's fine. It's just so heavy-handed, and this kind of doubles down on that in that it's explicitly called out, like, don't do that because it gives him power. I don't know why it bothers me, and it doesn't really bother me. It has never resonated with me, and I've always found it kind of ham-fisted.
See, so for me, this is like the inverse of that trope, right? I know the kind of trope that you're speaking of. This feels more like a direct call out of that trope, saying like, hey, we shouldn't even be acknowledging him as God. And there isn't another thing to like worship or talk to, or, another religion at this point in any context. But it's incorrect to assume that creature is God. And I think that's really what it's about, more or less. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
You're marketing for him. Like you are resharing an advertisement.
Yeah, but it's less about the actual like and maybe it's different because this entity still exists and is alive and is an actual force within the world at this point. But I don't know. I didn't see it as that much different. It just kind of reinforced that this is kind of the rebel group to that, and this is still relevant. I don't know. It didn't come across as distinct to me. But
sure.
I can see where you're coming from.
Like, it's the inverse in its own way of he who shall not be named, right, with Harry Potter. I know at the very least that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, he who shall not be named is like, we don't want to give his name power, so we don't say the name. But in fact, they created something different that's powerful by not doing it, right? And this is instead saying, like, don't even acknowledge that thing as God. And, like, cursing about it is just silly because he's nothing to curse to or at or about.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, fair enough. We're also introduced to another element to be of assistance, someone who will be playing the part of Lord Renew, as Kelsier had previously had him killed under different circumstances at a different time here. What do you kind of make of this new angle, and also Yin's reaction to the murder of Nobleman, and kind of everyone else being like very cagey about the replacement?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I don't know how to put it any other way. This does also hint at the idea that there are other forms of magic or magical abilities that can be wielded by our protagonists at the very least, or by people within this world. So that's cool and exciting. And even though we're starting to learn more and more about allomancy, we know that there are still mysteries out there to be uncovered.
Yeah, for sure. That there's still other things, even though some things are being revealed.
There's still depth.
Do you have any particular predictions about who or what you think Renew is?
I have a couple ideas. One is sort of in the realm of something almost necromantic. Like, it is the same body, but reanimated. The other idea is the mist wraiths that we've had a bunch of mentions of, because they mention the idea that they can take the form of people that they know. I think mist wraith makes more sense, and they're misunderstood by the Ska, so we don't know actually what they do, but Kelsier somehow has the ability to influence them into taking a specific form. And that's why people are so cagey about it, and how they're warning like, nah, you'd like that even less. So presumably it's something that people would know about and have information on. So Mist Wraith makes sense.
Okay. All right. Sweet. That'll be, yep.
You can go ahead and italicize that shit, or I don't know how, if I have it. I didn't
you don't even
write
have
any of that
down.
Out. Yep. So I'll write that into the predictions for next week.
Okay. And we also get Vin's assignment here as well, how she will be handling the nobleman as a spy from the inside, as she's the only one who possibly could, excuse me. Ooh, and how interesting a development that is. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but what do you think of those implications? What do you think of the whole thing?
It will be an interesting development. So I'm curious, and I'm expecting her to go through a bunch of training in different aspects, probably from the different members of the crew, training her on the different metals of her allomancy. Maybe different people that are specifically bred to be predisposed to be experts in certain fields, giving her insight on different things. That might be a different story we're talking about.
Avatar, The Last Airbender?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Could be. Maybe? She's going to be the Avatar?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of interesting things here that could happen with and to Vin, right? And she's understandably nervy about this idea, but she's, I think there's some part of her that's excited to be a part of the team, that's just glad to be here, but definitely shocked about what she has to do.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So finally, this chapter ends with Marsh returning, and he and Kelsier having a conversation in the other room while Vin listens in.
That's some sneaky shit, man. I can't imagine that Kelsier is completely unaware of Vin's presence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure he knows, and I'm sure he kind of anticipates it, honestly. So I'm excited to see what she uncovers.
Yeah, and we know Vin to be sneaky, not just from like her nature, but also her actions. Even at the beginning of the section, she was like aware of when Kelsier came home and aware of what he was doing, and kind of like cognizant of those different things and catching everyone up. Also, I realized I think we forgot to drink when they fetched that secret bottle of wine, by the way.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. All right. So our final note of the week is that of the Chapter 7 prophecy, which is really kind of fun. It speaks of Rashek, a tall terraceman, and that of Kalenium, a place that this man curses despite having never seen it. I'm just going to read it here. I think that might be fun for these last ones to have like read this at the end of each week. So Rashek is a tall man, of course. Most of the terrace men are tall. He is so young to receive so much respect from the other pack men. He has charisma, and women of court would probably describe him as handsome in a rugged sort of way. Yet it amazes me that anyone would give heed to a man who speaks such hatred. He has never seen Kalenium, yet he curses the city. He does not know me, yet I can already see the anger and hostility in his eyes. Thoughts?
None. Absolutely none. I am so lost and confused here. I really thought these would be immediately relevant to like what we were talking about after the first couple. They are not. They are not in the slightest. So I've got no fucking idea what's going on, man.
Well, that's fun. And it's interesting to see your the way that this is latched into you, like, wax and wane a little bit here, and kind of, you know, come and go.
Fuck these passages. I really enjoy them, but fuck them.
It's still fun because you get like this secondary through line to a different story, right? Like
I love how you write these questions as if I'm going to like have something insightful to say about it.
Well,
do you expect me to have an answer?
Sometimes. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you come up with shit that I don't have written down and other stuff. You know, like, I have to try to prepare as reasonably... I'm going to die. I'm trying to prepare as reasonably as I can for, you know, like, your thoughts and components like that. So
yeah, that's fair.
You know, that's the hope, is that maybe you do have something to say, maybe you don't, and that's okay. Which is also why at the end of every week, PJ, I ask, do you have anything else? Do you have anything else that you liked this week, or anything else that was kind of on your mind week to week? I will say we got the Lord Ruler's gender confirmed, he, him, a couple of times throughout this section. Okay. Yep. But that was the only one that I really wanted to bring up from episode to episode. But any sort of other things that are on your mind, other beats, other questions relating to the chapter, anything?
I think we hit everything that I had like prepared for. So things felt good. All
right. Well, cool. With that, we move into your predictions, of which
I have a few written down, and I was writing them as we were like making comments back and forth with each other, and we brought up Jeopardy. So one of them is a complete joke, but I'm still going to read it. This goes along with the ones that you've italicized in my notes, because they're kind of predictions. And
yeah, we're going to do a better job this season. For anyone who's listened to us season over season, PJ makes predictions in the middle of the episode that we don't normally document. We're going to actually document those, because those predictions are probably enough. Yeah, right. Also, those predictions will probably be enough. So
they will, because this one, I think, is entirely overlapped. So this is the only extra prediction I have. Okay, so first thing I have written down. Vin will undergo training from each of the different disciplines represented by the crew. Said that already. That makes sense to me. It's going to be kind of like a... I don't know, you go through training when you go to a new job, and they're like, this is the sales department. They're going to give you training on sales, even though you're not part of the sales team. Crossland, pretend you're not part of the sales team in this situation. Here's the R&D department. They're going to tell you about all the products we have in the pipeline. Here's the data management. Like, I'm thinking she's going to go through like an onboarding process with all the different members. Next thing I have written, Kelsier will be outbid by $1 and will not receive any points. That was the joke about game shows that we were playing before. And the third one, Lord Renew or someone close to him will be another point of view, or the crew will travel to Lord Renew and work on some stuff. So, you know, not a whole lot to go on there, but I'm thinking that's going to happen. And by the way, these predictions are for the entire book. It's sometimes the entire series, but this one that I put last, I'm putting the gamble on next reading section. So if it happens in the next reading section, you drink, and if it doesn't, I drink. So a little bit more specific on this one, because that's just a bullshit prediction for me to hold you accountable for. So,
all right.
Yeah. Oh, that's another sort of thing. This is kind of our little bets throughout the show. If I get a prediction right, Crossland drinks.
At the beginning of the episode. Yep.
I drink. So
yes. Yep. Absolutely. So with that, we have the question of the week. The question of the week for the first 3 episodes here is, what is your favorite prologue? So get those into us as soon as you can here, and we will read them on the 4th episode of this show. So
and
get them in.
Are you talking literary? Are you talking like the prologue to a TV show or movie or something? Like what are you?
It could be either. Like there's some like I would say probably not TV shows. I can't think of any TV shows with prologues that don't like.
Neither can I. I'm just making you elaborate.
They're like movie prologues, like horror movie prologues, for instance, are a decent enough example. But I'm thinking mostly literature, like favorite prologue. Okay. I'm one who's previously stated that I'm not a massive fan of prologues. This has one of my favorite prologues in it. The series does. So, it really depends on the story, but yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, send us in your favorite prologues for sure. With that, next week, we will be reading chapters 7 and 8. So this is a short one. This is going to end part 1. So with that, you you won't have to read the next terrorist prophecy at the beginning of part 2 because they are delineated. So don't flip to the next chapter. Just finish out the part.
Cool. Sounds good.
So yeah, really only one prophecy next week.
Not that they fucking matter.
Only one prophecy next week, PJ. Stop sweating about it. Yeah, quick, breezy, 40 pages. It should be a pretty quick part. This is the shortest section, second shortest section, actually, that we're going to be reading this entire time. The rest of them are going to get a little bit longer than the last couple that we've gone through. But, yeah. Sweet.
Cool.
With that, that's where we're going to leave you for the week.
Thank you, as ever, to Tim and Andrew for helping us kind of make this show happen. You can check out our links in the show notes. You can find our schedule, Patreon, previous episodes, our websites, our socials, all in one very convenient location.
Yeah, all of that, including the, like PJ said, the show notes, you're able to find all of that. Otherwise, reach out to us on social media. The links are obviously, as they've previously been described, down there. Check us out, Words Whiskey Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Send us email at wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com. And happy to see you out here. Happy to be reading the series and cannot wait. Thank you all so much for the support. Leave us a 5-star review if you can. Tell your friends, especially people who like Mistborn, about the series. We'd love to have them listen and either relive the series with us or give them a reason to kind of chat about it each week with you. So yeah.
I've got an idea, Crossland,
sure.
Because we constantly fuck up our own social handles and email address. Maybe we should put them in the show notes.
We should probably write it down in the notes here in our show notes. Yeah, motherfuck.
I literally did not put any thought into that before, but we are always fucking that up.
Literally, I had to edit around it this week, so I had to clean it up and cut it from a different episode. It sucked. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
All right, so Words Whiskey Pod.
Yep.
Words Whiskey Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Words and Whiskey Show, right? At gmail.com.
Yes. Yep.
wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com. Okay. Words
and
Whiskey
then on top
Pod,
of that,
Words and Whiskey Show.
Patreon.com/words and whiskey.
There we go.
Boom. That's all of them.
All right. We have them in there. They will live in our
They will
notes
forever be here and we will never fuck them up again.
We still will.
We still might, but at the very least, there's less of an excuse now.
Now it's on us.
Yeah,
instead
truly
of past us for making.
Or on our memory, yeah, at the time. Sweet. With that, see you next week.
Have a good one.
Boy.